Designer Cooper Coles was so confident in HMS Captain's revolutionary low-freeboard design that he sailed aboard to prove critics wrong. Heavy turrets on a shallow hull created catastrophic top heaviness that physics couldn't forgive. During a routine Bay of Biscay cruise in 1870, moderate winds caused dangerous heeling. Water poured through gun ports barely above waterline. Within minutes, Captain capsized and sank, taking 500 men, including Coles, to the bottom. His confidence had created a floating coffin. HMS Victoria carried massive 16.25-inch guns that demanded such heavy armor, her stability suffered dangerously. In 1893, Admiral Tryon ordered 2 battleship columns to turn inward during maneuvers, a geometric impossibility he either didn't calculate or chose to ignore. Victoria's poor handling prevented avoiding collision with HMS Camperdown, whose reinforced ram punched through below waterline. She sank in 13 minutes, taking Tryon and 358 crew down. Even powerful battleships become worthless when design flaws meet human error. Russia's 1870s shipyards lacked the precision manufacturing to build what Peter Velicki's ambitious design demanded. Combining outdated sailing rig with experimental steam propulsion, she leaked constantly and suffered chronic engine failures. Armor protected unnecessary areas while leaving vitals exposed. Guns couldn't train properly due to mast interference. During the Russo-Turkish War, commanders kept her in port rather than risk breakdown. She spent her career in harbor defense, a humiliating fate for what was supposed to be Russia's most powerful warship. The Havana Harbor explosion made USS Maine famous, but design incompetence made the disaster inevitable. Gun turrets mounted on sponsons created structural weak points and dangerous rolling. Inadequate ventilation made magazines dangerously warm, while coal bunkers sat directly adjacent to them, violating basic safety principles. When Maine exploded February 15, 1898, killing 266 crew, the blast sparked the Spanish-American War. Poor engineering had created a powder keg waiting for ignition. France's Brennus impressed with her appearance, then disappointed with everything else. The tumblehome hull curved inward above waterline, creating violent rolling that made gunnery impossible except in calm seas. Heavy guns scattered across single turrets made concentrated fire tactically senseless. Fire control couldn't coordinate weapons that couldn't work together. She spent her career in the Mediterranean, where poor seakeeping and inadequate armor made her a liability rather than an asset. Form had triumphed over function. French design philosophy met Russian construction quality in Ozliabya, inheriting the worst of both. The tumblehome hull combined with poor construction meant constant leaking and chronic mechanical failures. During the Baltic to Far East voyage, she struggled keeping pace with the fleet, while systems failed continuously. At Tsushima in 1905, Japanese shells found her poorly protected areas. She capsized within 40 minutes of battle starting, taking over 500 men down as the first capital ship lost. The worst of two worlds. Bouvet took French all-or-nothing armor philosophy to dangerous extremes, leaving critical areas exposed while overprotecting others. Her extreme tumble-home hull rolled unpredictably and shipped water in moderate seas. Main armaments scattered across multiple deck levels made coordinated fire impossible. During the Dardanelles campaign in 1915, she struck a mine near a poorly protected magazine. The ship capsized in less than 2 minutes, so quickly that only 75 of 710 crew escaped. Beautiful, flawed, and deadly. On July 9, 1917, HMS Vanguard exploded without warning while anchored at Scapa Flow. Built in 1909 with rushed construction, her magazine arrangements placed different propellant types dangerously close together. ventilation couldn't adequately cool magazines during summer months. The detonation was so massive it shattered windows on ships hundreds of yards away. She sank in 90 seconds, killing 804 men. Only 2 survived. Modern battleships, it turned out, remained as vulnerable to internal catastrophe as their predecessors. America's first dreadnought looked revolutionary on paper. USS Michigan featured all big gun armament that promised to match British innovation. Reality delivered disappointment. Superimposed turrets created blast interference, making accurate gunnery nearly impossible. Armor distribution followed outdated theories, leaving vitals exposed. Underpowered propulsion made her slower than foreign contemporaries. During World War I, she was deemed too slow and poorly armed for Atlantic convoy duty. The first American dreadnought spent the war training gunners, a humiliating role.
Built as solid German pre-war construction, SMS Ostfriesland saw limited action at Jutland before surrender as a war prize. In 1921, General Billy Mitchell used her to prove air power could sink battleships. Despite German quality and compartmentalization, aerial bombs sent her down in 21 minutes during controlled tests. The demonstration shocked naval traditionalists and vindicated air power advocates. Ostfriesland had survived the Great War only to prove battleships faced obsolescence from above. Austria-Hungary's limited industrial capacity turned St. Istvan's construction into a 6-year nightmare instead of the planned 3. She finally commissioned in 1915, plagued by unreliable boilers, excessive vibration, and multiple hull leaks. On June 10, 1918, during her first major operation, Italian torpedo boats attacked. 2 torpedoes struck her poorly protected hull. Flooding spread rapidly through inadequately sealed compartments. She capsized after 3 hours, captured on film in World War I's most dramatic sinking sequence. Leonardo da Vinci fell victim to what good design couldn't prevent: lax security. The ship featured modern triple turrets and good armor protection, but sabotage concerns went ignored. On August 2, 1916, while moored at Taranto, Austrian saboteurs detonated explosives in a forward magazine. She capsized at her moorings, taking 248 crew members. The ship remained capsized until 1919, a humiliating symbol visible to all of Italian naval vulnerability. Russian magazine safety procedures remained dangerously lax, even as dreadnoughts grew more complex. Imperatrica Maria stored ammunition improperly with inadequate ventilation, while Russian construction quality stayed predictably poor. On October 20, 1916, fire broke out in a forward magazine while she was anchored at Sevastopol. The blaze spread through poorly designed compartments before the magazine detonated catastrophically. She capsized at her moorings, killing over 200. Russian incompetence had claimed another capital ship. Spain's budget couldn't support a battleship, but prestige demanded one anyway. España was too small to be effective and too expensive for Spanish resources. Reduced armament and thin armor made her vulnerable, while underpowered propulsion left her slower than potential enemies. On August 26, 1923, she ran aground off Morocco during operations. Salvage attempts failed as storms battered the stranded ship. She broke apart completely, a total loss. The disaster exposed how smaller nations wasted resources on prestige they couldn't maintain. Brazil ordered Sao Paulo from Britain in 1907 during South America's naval race, then discovered maintaining a dreadnought exceeded their capabilities. Maintenance was neglected, crew training inadequate, and the ship spent most of her career in port deteriorating. By the 1930s, she was obsolete and barely functional. In 1951, while being towed to Italian scrappers, she encountered Atlantic storms. The deteriorated hull failed, tow lines parted,
and Sao Paulo disappeared with her skeleton crew, vanishing into the ocean she'd barely sailed. Argentina joined the South American dreadnought race by building Rivadavia in American yards to counter Brazilian expansion. The capable ship had no strategic purpose. She spent decades in port, rarely exercising and never seeing combat. Maintenance was sporadic, and by World War II, she was hopelessly outdated. She consumed enormous resources Argentina's economy couldn't spare, lingering until 1957, when she was finally sold for scrap. She'd accomplished nothing except draining the treasury for meaningless prestige. Originally British-built as a capable design, Almirante La Torre served as HMS Canada during World War I, before Chile reclaimed her in 1920. Like her South American contemporaries, she had no real purpose. Too expensive to operate regularly, and too powerful for any realistic Chilean scenario, she spent decades anchored in Valparaiso, rusting. By the 1950s, she was a hulk Chile couldn't afford to scrap. She finally went to breakers in 1959, having accomplished nothing. Originally Petropavlovsk, Marat survived the Russian Revolution only to face Soviet incompetence. Poorly modernized in the 1930s by shipyards lacking battleship expertise, she entered World War II outdated and vulnerable. On September 23, 1941, German dive bombers struck Leningrad. A 1,000-kilogram bomb hit her forward magazine, blowing off her bow and sinking her in shallow water. She settled with stern and after turrets above water, reduced to firing as a stationary battery. A dreadnought transformed into a concrete pillbox with a naval ensign.
France couldn't afford to replace Britannia, so inadequate 1930s modernization had to suffice. She entered World War II slow, poorly armored, and equipped with outdated fire control, obsolete in every measure. When France fell in 1940, she fled to Mers el-Kébir. The British, fearing German seizure, demanded surrender. When Admiral Gansoul refused, the Royal Navy opened fire. Hit multiple times, magazine explosions capsized Britannia in minutes, killing 977 crew. Obsolete battleships had become liabilities. Italy's most modern battleship, commissioned in 1942 with excellent armor and powerful armament, but Roma never fired her guns in anger. Fuel shortages kept her in port throughout her brief career. On September 9, 1943, sailing to surrender at Malta after Italy's armistice, German aircraft attacked with Fritz X guided bombs. 2 penetrated her deck, 1 detonating in the forward magazine. She broke in half and sank in minutes, taking 1,393 men. Modern design couldn't save her from modern weapons. Germany's most powerful warship spent her entire career hiding. Tirpitz never engaged enemy surface ships and rarely left Norwegian fjords, while the British devoted enormous resources to neutralizing her through bombing raids and midget submarine attacks. On November 12, 1944, RAF Tallboy earthquake bombs capsized her at moorings, trapping over 1,000 crew inside. She died without firing main guns in combat. The ultimate strategic failure, a battleship that accomplished nothing except tying down British resources. On June 8, 1943, Mutsu exploded without warning while anchored at Hashirajima. Forward magazines detonated, blowing off her bow and sinking her in minutes. Over 1,100 crew died in the disaster. Investigations suggested sabotage, but never determined the true cause, perhaps because accepting unknown vulnerability was more terrifying than blaming saboteurs. The loss devastated Japanese morale and removed a powerful unit when losses couldn't be replaced. Even active battleships remained vulnerable to catastrophic internal failure. Built in 1917 and modernized in the 1930s, Yamashiro was obsolete by 1944. On October 25th, she led the Japanese Southern Force into Surigao Strait during Leyte Gulf. American battleships, many Pearl Harbor survivors seeking revenge, waited in ambush with prepared firing solutions. Yamashiro sailed into devastating crossfire of battleship guns and torpedo attacks. Hit repeatedly, she capsized and sank with nearly all crew. The last battleship versus battleship engagement in history ended with a massacre. Stalin's vision called for 60,000-ton monsters with massive 16-inch guns. Construction began in 1938 on Sovetsky Soyuz at Leningrad shipyards, lacking the expertise or equipment for such ambition. Work proceeded slowly through brutal winters as workers froze and materials failed. German invasion in 1941 stopped construction completely. The incomplete hull sat rusting throughout the war, a monument to megalomaniacal fantasy. Stalin briefly considered post-war completion, but reality finally intruded. Scrapped, incomplete in 1948, having consumed enormous resources while accomplishing nothing. Originally the third Yamato-class battleship, Shinano was converted to carrier after Midway, in a rushed conversion featuring poor workmanship and inadequate crew training. On November 29, 1944, just 10 days after commissioning, she sailed for final fitting out. USS Archerfish intercepted and fired 6 torpedoes. 4 hit, causing flooding that poorly trained damage control couldn't contain. She capsized after 7 hours, taking over 1,400 with her. She'd been operational less than 2 weeks, never launching a single aircraft. Japan's ultimate industrial waste and the final proof of battleship irrelevance in modern naval warfare.